Welcome to Alliance's Inspired Design. I'm your host, Rochelle Marish. In this thought leadership series, we will be discussing how innovation is inspired by organizations' culture, brand, and strategy. Welcome. Today we are going to hear how we can successfully lead creative teams in a dispersed work environment. I have the pleasure of introducing Ahti Hujanen, Chief Technology Officer of Glympse, a tech organization located in Seattle. Ahti has led and managed dispersed teams for years at various organizations. He is also the owner and founder of YadaWorks, which has been working dispersed since its inception. Ahti, thanks for being here today. Excited to have you.
Thanks, Rochelle. I'm really excited too.
So let's get right to it. The UX
Yeah.
design process is unique as you cover so many different facets when thinking about a design problem. Can you take us through your iterative design process, how you lead creative dispersed teams, and the integration of the customer service and how this influences innovation?
Design, as with many things, always starts with the people. And you've got to build an environment that has trust, that brings out people's ideas, which it can be really vulnerable, right? And one of the fundamental things when I get teams together to do that is you start with some ground rules. And I love the improvisational ground rules, which is never contradict, always take what somebody says and build upon it. Because nothing really crushes that creative spirit when you throw out a great idea, think it's wonderful, and somebody critiques it. And you have to do that openly. Get everybody on the same page. Hey, here's what we're up to. And speaking of what you're up to, it's amazing when you pull people together and how often they don't have the same idea. So getting clear on what problem you're trying to solve right up front is one of the most important things. Then you're kind of set. That's the foundation you can leap off from. Then what I really like to do if you're talking about a brand new creative idea is two parts and very separate. And I call them divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So divergent thinking is really where you're creating all the different ideas. And this is where the improvisational rule is really valuable because you're just trying to idea, expand as many ideas as possible, get wild and crazy. And then you'll probably naturally come to a point where, that tapers off. You start, you lose momentum, and then you say, okay, we're done with the divergent thinking. And then you want to converge. And convergent is taking those ideas and then starting to whittle them down. And I've seen ideas where people have colored everybody has a limited number of colored stickies. And you come put them up on a whiteboard. You say, okay, here's the one I'm voting for. You start whittling it down. You probably want criteria. One project I work on, we had this great criteria. We were actually building a mobile app for a financial services company. And we're trying to change habits of millennial users. The big thing about that is we needed to engage them. If they stuck around over time, we were confident we could change their habits. If they, just used a little bit and left, we couldn't do anything about it. So we really need to engage them and have it be sticky. We spent a lot of time trying to establish what are the characteristics of an engaging experience. And here, let me grab my notebook here with some of the things we came up with. And what we came up with was something that has to be simple, visual, social, captivating, surprising, intrinsically rewarding, dynamic, and personalized. Those are great words to use. I think when you hear them, it's like, oh yeah, of course. But how we used those was we would develop a rapid prototype. I'm talking days here, just a little slightly interactive thing with some nice design around it. We put it up on usertesting.com, which is a site that actually gets real people to interact with it. And it records their mouse and their voice as they're walking through something. And you can give some questions that we're asking people to do or tasks. And we would see those videos and we would rate on those 8 different dimensions. And then we would iterate, and over time, we could see the improvement of our designs and targeting, things like that. A lot of times, you come into a meeting room, either it's new people or people worked before, but you're not necessarily in a creative mindset. You're thinking about, your drive into work, the tasks you need to get on your task list for that day. One of the most useful things, and this is what comes from the art world, is a warm-up exercise. It can be a drawing, it can be an interactive thing with a team, it can be a little challenge. Take 10 or 15 minutes to get people thinking creatively.
That sounds fantastic. I love your examples that you have there, Ahti.
Thanks.
I was going to ask you, how do you gather data to engage the client experience? You said that you do these tests, you do these like mock-ups, But how do you gather this data and then have that influence your design?
Early on, it's really lo-fi. I mean, it's literally the team measuring it perceptively. Like we'll actually start, usually even before we get to using user testing, we'll just run it by our coworkers. I mean, you'd be amazed at how you can whittle away some ideas just right there. Run it by some people who aren't on the creative team, but are in the office, and just say, hey, I want to use you a second. Come here. Let me try this out. Let me tell me what you think. As you start to mature, you need more data and you need integrity and authenticity in it. So
Mm-hmm.
I work in the software world, so gathering data usually isn't a problem. It takes discipline. You know, we have things like Google Analytics or analytics packages where you can put little tracers in websites or in mobile apps that tell us what screen people are on, how long they're spending time doing those things. So we'll gather a lot of that data. Sometimes it can take quite a bit of analysis. So as you grow and scale, you have to
Mm-hmm.
put more effort into the analysis and gathering of the data, storing of the data. Really early on, it's a matter of just gathering it. I'll speak to another project. Quite a few years ago, I worked at a large company in Minneapolis here, and we were doing self-checkout systems for libraries, and we were trying to build a new generation. And we had built a prototype, a kiosk. We actually brought it into the vestibule of libraries. We would ask people to, and we'd mocked it up so it actually could do some things. We'd ask people to try it out, and we would write down our observations. We'd actually ask them some questions at the end. So we gathered quite a bit of information there, and that dramatically changed our design. We originally had the checkout systems in libraries work. There's a little magnetic strip of material that sits in the binder of a book that sets off the alarm gates. These self-checkout systems use a magnetic field to turn it on and off. The ideal magnetic field is this round tubular type of thing. And people insert the book, it turns it on and off, and you're done. Well, it turns out when people use that, it made them think of CAT scanners and radiation. So as we were doing the testing, we immediately got this feedback, wow, that design, well, the physics of it were wonderful. The human aspects of it were terrible. And we had to go back to the drawing board, and it reset our whole project. And I would credit that with making it hugely successful because we did that testing in the vestibule of those libraries.
I'm really inspired by what you just said. It
Mm-hmm.
it just goes to show how much we need to really iterate with people
Mm-hmm. Oh
and
my gosh, yes.
iterate with users or customers or employees to really understand their
Yeah.
human behavior.
I feel like it's almost an entrepreneurial spirit. When you get, you can almost see the magic happening when a team starts to do it, because
Yes.
they're just like, oh, we could do this. And then they jump out and they actually do it.
I was curious if you have any recommendations or suggestions, like it would be something that you would love to have people get around.
It's a really great question. One, I would say, look to the fields of art. They do this and they know how to do this. Steal their ideas and apply them to your field. It's amazing how like that, design warm up that comes straight from drawing. If you go to model drawing, you go in a room and there'll be a model in the middle of the room and people are drawing. They start out with like doing, okay, you have 30 seconds to draw us, and then 1 minute, then 5 minutes, then 10 minutes. All that is designed to get their minds working, creatively warming it up. And then they get into like a 30-minute drawing. They don't just
Yeah.
come in and start drawing for 30 minutes. They do warm-ups. And, there's so many great ideas from the art world around how to be creative. The other piece is, I think, especially in the US, we have this idea that there's like the one person with the great ideas. And there are people like Steve Jobs, right? But most people are not Steve Jobs. And when I've seen creativity really work well, it's that ideas come from anywhere. In fact, the most surprising area. Get as many people participating as possible. Draw it out of them. You have to. They'll be introverted people. You have to actually ask them questions, but they'll warm up. And as you
Yeah.
build an environment of trust and practice, they'll participate more and more. Yeah, get as many ideas as possible. Nobody has license to good ideas.
I love it. So for some of us, we're starting to just be dispersed. We're finding new ways of
Mm-hmm.
working. We may be being dispersed for the first time ever. Whereas people like you've been doing this for years. So as we're all being asked to work differently, how have you led the design process with dispersed teams? And
Mm-hmm.
what specific aspects would you recommend to ensure a successful team engagement and outcome?
We live in a different world right now, right?
Hmm.
And even for us in the tech field, where we've been doing this for quite a while, quite frankly, the design stuff usually happened in person, right? And we're having to do this. I'd say it starts with building trust in teams. That was true when we're face to face, and
Yeah.
it was far easier to start there and then disperse. Now we're having to do that from the get go. We're having to learn to do it like this, right? Over video conference. Creatively, I think you gotta use a little more discipline in what you're doing with engaging people, bringing it out of them. And I think you got to practice a little bit more, quite frankly. Do it more often. We're even experimenting with how can we bring some social aspects to our company. We used to have this all hands a lunch every week where our CEO would be there and talk with people. We immediately went to a weekly all hands on Zoom. We've had much better success and engagement on that than we had before. We've now decided, even if we start going back to the office a little bit, we're always going to do a weekly all hands on Zoom because we have remote workers, but we got engagement of everybody in a different way. We've had a virtual happy hour, and we're trying to innovate different ways of doing that. You have to spend much more conscious effort on building that social fabric in your organization, because that builds the trust.
How have you done that with your internal teams? Thinking about mentoring, we used to stop by people's desks. I used to, I should say,
Yes.
stop by people's desks, see how they're doing. How have you been connecting and mentoring, and in a soft way, managing people while being dispersed?
Yeah, I'm the same with you. I love the, just walk around, chat with people. It was part of how I led, and it really feels missing. I'm having to make much more conscious efforts to schedule one-on-ones and video chats just to say, hey, how's it going? What are you up to? And to be honest, I think I'm still learning how to do it, but I'd say it's taking more effort. Where before it's just like I'm having coffee, I see somebody, and just have a chat with them. Now I've got to schedule time and make sure it's happening. The fundamentals aren't any different. Just the medium and the discipline has to change.
That's a really great perspective. I appreciate that a lot. How have you been able to engage your teams to think creatively while we're all being dispersed?
It's a lot of the same ideas, except sitting in a meeting room was always difficult, for a couple hours. You get beyond a few hours, it gets really difficult, really tiring. Video conferences, I actually think, are even more tiring. You're sitting in one spot. In a meeting room, I could get up and walk around, and, I would do that often. You can write on whiteboards, which I love doing. All those physical dynamics are gone now in this medium. We've used some online tools where you can collaboratively put things on the screen. There are plenty of them out there. Zoom has some. Those help the process. We had a really good design discussion where, have you heard of a mind map, where basically you have nodes and just like you build off of nodes with different ideas and it spreads out like a
Yeah.
spider almost. And we had one design discussion like that. That actually worked quite well. And, and people could work collaboratively. You could see it as they were writing things, and we were on the conference. And so we would have a conversation, spend 5 minutes, and you could contribute and watch people contribute to this mind map as it went along. I think things like that are we're going to have to look at how we replace the whiteboard with tools like that. But I would say that we haven't found the right replacement for the whiteboard yet, things like that you can do in person. And those are more presentation, not an interactive design session.
Well, do you have anything that you would want to lastly share with everyone on how to successfully lead creative teams while we're all dispersed?
One of the best things I can say is leading is not about being the one out front. It's like encouraging everybody else to step up front. So get out of the way, cultivate that environment of trust and participation, and get out of the way. Be one of the people participating. Encourage them to give their ideas, reward them when they offer their ideas, be a strong advocate for them. It won't happen overnight. It takes time. And you be creative yourself. It's like you being creative in how you do it, and always bring new ideas into how you can continue to evolve being creative. It's a little bit, meta there. Fosters creativity too. So continue to look in the art world and other areas of what are different ideas you can bring in, and keep mixing it up.
Well, thank you so much, Ahti. This has been an inspiring discussion. I see so many different tools and ways of how we could be thinking about things differently. And so I really appreciate the discussion today.
Thanks, Rochelle. It's my pleasure.